Hello and a very warm welcome. My name's David Roth from WPP, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to Follow the Sun, 24 hours of broadcasting right across the world to celebrate the launch of the WPP BAV Best Country Study for 2021, done in conjunction with US News and the Wharton Business School. It's a pleasure to have you join us for this section. Of course, this broadcast is going to be right across the world. We're starting in Australia and New Zealand, and we'll be ending at the end of the 24-hour period in the USA. Well, we've got an absolutely packed broadcast today, and I'd like to start off by introducing Mike Sussman from BAV. Mike has been the brainchild behind the Best Country Studies for many years, and there's nobody better to put the Best Country Study into context. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, David. We're really excited about the launch of the 2021 Best Countries study. It's the most comprehensive study of the power of nation brands. We've been doing this for 6 years, covering countries that represent 95% of the global GDP and about 75% of the world's population. So an amazing coverage. This year, we're looking at 78 countries. We spoke to over 17,000 business decision makers, citizens, and elites around the world. And we've ranked countries on a battery of metrics, including 26 key rankings that we'll talk about throughout this report and throughout the app. One thing we've seen over time is the shifting impact of soft power. It's becoming more and more important to driving the power of a country, while hard power, like banks and tanks, as we call it, the more traditional power, is becoming less impactful on the success of a nation. When we think about the power of a nation, we think about 10 key dimensions, and you can look at each of these ranks and how a country does on these things, from entrepreneurship to cultural influence to quality of life. We've introduced 2 new ones that are becoming more and more important today in these changing dynamics of culture. One of those is how socially purposeful is a nation. And the second is how agile is a nation, and how responsive it is to things, particularly during a COVID era. And both of those dimensions are extremely important in driving the GDP and the success of a nation. Agile nations are seen as 3 times more likely to be a better job market. They're rated 3.2 times more likely as being economically influential. They are more connected to the rest of the world. So agile nations are doing something to resonate with people globally. Really important to mention, and it's the biggest driver now of GDP. And that's something that the nations need to be more and more of today. So when you think about agility, the top nations around the world this year are USA, number 1 in terms of being an agile country, followed by Australia, and in 3rd place is Canada. We continue to see the rising power of purpose, not just for brands, but also for nations. In fact, purposeful nations are 57% more likely to be considered for tourism, 55% more likely to be considered as a place to do business. So it's important to be seen as a purposeful and socially responsible country. Number 1 on this purposeful dimension is Canada, followed by Denmark, and in 3rd place is New Zealand out of 78. So pretty impressive, pretty strong dimensions, very important. We also see the power and impact of brands that resonate from countries. In fact, 79.5% of citizens say that consumer brands play an important role in defining a country's culture. So there's a strong relationship between the brands and the nation. We also see that 78.6% of citizens say that the country a product is made in impacts their preference for a brand. So you can see that interplay between brand and country and how important it is today. And we started measuring the power of what does it mean to be made in a specific country. What does made in America mean, and made in China? And we can rank the power of these nations in terms of their exports. So, for instance, Germany ranks number 1 in terms of the country you'd want to buy an automobile from. They also dominate on pharmaceuticals and beer. So you can see a little bit of a balanced power of that nation. Italy is number 1 on fashion. So that's the top brand for when you're thinking about buying fashion brands. France owns cosmetics. In terms of the best countries for real estate, Canada ranks number 1, followed by the United States and then France. So overall, again, you can see how the building blocks of a nation affect its overall ranking. And we're excited to share some more details with you. Back to you, David.
Well, now it's time to get an overview of the key insights from the 2021 study on a global perspective. And who better to do that for us than Professor David Ribstein from Wharton University. Professor Ribstein has been our partner in this study since it started, and his unique understanding and unique perspective of countries, of brands, and what's driving GDP growth is unrivaled. So let's hear from David now.
Hello, I'm Dave Ribstein. I'm a marketing professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I've been involved with the Best Country Study since its inception. This year has been a different year. It's been a transformational year. There's been many things that have affected how we view countries and how we live our particular lives. First and foremost, obviously, we've had to deal with the COVID-19 and the tragic loss of millions of lives all around the world. Accompanying this has been the huge impact on economies of various different countries, leading to an overall global recession. Some countries have handled the pandemic well, such as South Korea and Taiwan and several others, whereas other countries have not handled it nearly as well. Accompanying this pandemic has been the subsequent vaccine distribution. And this has required acquisition of vaccines as well as some form of equitable distribution of those. Perhaps Israel has been the country that has done the best at it. There are others that are catching up, but there are other countries that are still struggling today with trying to manage the vaccine distribution. A third major thing that's been happening this year has been the Black Lives movement that originated in the United States and has found it in various other countries all around the world. Climate impact has been a major event that's happened in various different countries. Perhaps the most notable are the brush fires that happened in Australia. We've seen other events, such as the explosions that happened in the Beirut port, killing millions of lives. And of course, we could not ignore Brexit and the impact that's had on the British economy, as well as the economies of Europe. Many, many events have made this year an exceptional year. And it's part of what it is that we've all had to adjust to. Perhaps the greatest impact, of course, has been the pandemic. And what we have witnessed as individuals is we see that how we buy and where we shop, that's changed. How we work, many of us working from home, some of us not having jobs. So there's been a dramatic impact for individuals, where we eat and how we interact with family and friends, dramatically affected, and we've had to adapt. Businesses have had to adapt as well. And what they have had to do is how they connect with their customers has changed. Meetings have changed. The ability to have trade shows dramatically affected. The whole supply chain has been disrupted. And certain industries, such as the hospitality industries or the airline industry, have been dramatically affected, with sporting events being canceled throughout the world. So many, many industries have suffered as a result. And when I've talked to business leaders, almost inevitably, what it is that they tell me is they've needed to be agile. And it sort of is the buzzword that I hear from companies. But that's not restricted to just individuals and companies. Countries have had to adapt as well. And what it is that we have seen is we see, obviously, trying to get the healthcare systems up to speed and handling with this medical crisis that we've got. And getting medical supplies to the hospitals and to individuals has also been an issue. But trying to cope with the unemployment levels and trying to deal with that and supporting the local governments has been a major issue for countries all around the world. And what countries have had to do they've had to adapt as well. Well, we too at the Best Country Study have had to go through our own adaptations. We've added 13 new attributes that we use for evaluating countries, and we have taken one of the previous dimensions, that of citizenship, and we have morphed it into a dimension that we call social purpose. And what is social purpose? It has many of the dimensions that we had in citizenship, but it also includes dimensions such as human rights and racial equality and social justice and climate concern, that have all been attributes that now feed into the social purpose dimension. And we've added a new dimension. And this new dimension, this new overall factor is one of course, agility. And what is it that we have feeding into agility? Our perceptions of countries in terms of their adaptability and in terms of responsiveness and how progressive they are and how modern they happen to be and how dynamic they are, all feed into this agility dimension. So with that said, let's take a look at the latest rankings that we have.
everybody, and welcome to India. India's culture and heritage are well known and written about a lot. But in the BAV report, you will find other key factors which are core strengths for India. India is seen as unique, India is seen as distinctive, and it is these factors that have helped India to rank number 2 in the factor movers. As a mover country, there is a vibrancy to India. The culture of innovation began in the early tech days of the 90s. It has since bloomed, and with an increased risk appetite recently, it has led to India thrive in the startup space. In fact, India is one of the top 4 countries when it comes to the startup unicorns. Today, we would like to give you a peek into 3 specific areas that best reflect this culture of innovation. E-commerce with a focus on hyperlocal, EdTech, and the creator universe and creator economy.
The core factors that have been driving internet growth in India over the past year, driven in many cases by the unfortunate circumstances of the pandemic, have essentially been that all of us have had to rely on the internet, whether in the large towns of India or in the smaller towns or in the villages, also across small businesses and large businesses across the country. There's been a dramatic increase in internet usage. I think we're now at about 700 million plus internet users and are well on our way to getting to 1 billion in the next few years. Within each sector of the internet, there's a different dynamic that's driving growth. In education or edtech, many of us have kids studying from home, and they've been forced to go online to find resources, connect to live classes, and do their homework. Awareness of online education as a viable option for supplemental education as well as extracurricular activities has gone up tremendously. In the area of content, with the advent of OTTs, music streaming, podcasting, and social media, there are hundreds of media services available where people can spend their time. India's got more mobile data usage per internet user than any other country in the world, driven mainly by video consumption. Consumption has grown dramatically as people sit at home during lockdown or entertain themselves where other entertainment options have been closed. Thirdly, in the area of e-commerce, there the signal is a bit more mixed. Unlike other countries in the West and in China that have seen a dramatic increase in e-commerce usage, India has grown a little bit. There are some areas like grocery delivery and food delivery where the numbers have gone up dramatically. However, given the GDP per capita limitations of the country, we have not observed a significant uptick across the board in e-commerce. So overall, I think dramatic acceleration across the board in internet usage in India. And then depending on the sector you're talking about, there's a differential impact.
There is no other area where the culture of innovation is more evident than the creator ecosystem in India. Around 2010-12, one could argue that India was about 2-3 years behind in terms of social media evolution, whether it was platform uptake or brand investments or even innovations. However, in the last 5 to 6 years, I don't think that is true anymore. Today, India, the market, is setting the standards in terms of how the creator ecosystem could evolve. It took Facebook roughly 4 to 5 years to come close to 100 million users. But in India, in the last 2 years, especially after TikTok was banned, there are 2-3 different platforms which are based on creators who have grown to more than 50 million monthly active users in just less than 2 years of existence. By the end of next year, we probably are looking at a highly diverse social media ecosystem where maybe 6 to 7 different creator platforms will have more than 100 million users. And that will be so unique when you compare it to what is happening globally. And creators in India represent so many cultures and subcultures, not to mention languages. So it's going to be extremely diverse and extremely interesting. And the pandemic has accelerated much of this growth. In 2020, when most of the big film and sports stars in India did not have the limelight, it was the creators who rose to the occasion by becoming mainline entertainers.
I think there are three factors to it. Number one is, of course, accessible, fast internet. Number two is affordable smartphones. We all know the cameras in these phones are constantly getting better. And of course, that has led to creators being able to create great quality content. Number three is, of course, that because the economy is so democratic, you don't need expenses / production expenses to sit and develop content, which is one of the biggest reasons why it's become such a large economy. So of course, we all know that today social media is a very democratic place and platform for people to communicate, for people to express what they want to express. And the same goes for creators, right? There is no limit on what one wants to put out from a content standpoint. And that is the beauty about content creators and the economy of creators today. The fact that any person can choose to create a piece of content they find is likable, that they think will help them build a fan following, is in itself a statement of how they're redefining culture today. So the fact is that the creators aren't really consciously redefining what media platforms or how the media industry should evolve. The fact is that creators are just creating content to appeal to their fans. They are creating content that they want to express, that they want to communicate. And through this process, they've been able to build fans. And of course, there have been certain genres of content creation that have been able to define the media industry. For example, you look at gaming today. Gaming is a huge platform, not only as a esports, not only in the esports category, but also you look at casual gaming, you look at all forms of gaming. Gaming and short form content is here to stay, and it is going to redefine content consumption in a big way. Outside of that, we've also seen a lot of trends with creators becoming main star celebrities. You look at guys like Bhuvan Bam, for example. They're all moving into doing or getting involved in mainstream media, right? They're doing a film or they're working on OTT shows. So mainstream pop culture is today way more receptive to the content creator economy. And the beauty about it is that is the pinnacle for a content creator. You have the ability to actually become a star in your own right, irrespective of the kind of content you're creating. So I would say, from a content creator standpoint, the huge trend is of creators moving to mainstream pop culture. And from a content consumption standpoint, gaming is huge. And it's just the start in India, and we've already seen the kind of numbers it does. So I think gaming is going to be the next big thing that everyone's going to be talking about.
India has always been a land of mom and pop shops. Maybe 1 million, possibly 1 billion of them. We lovingly call them Kirana stores. They're all over the country. And that was the way Indians shopped till we discovered liberalization. Liberalization brought us competition. Liberalization brought international brands to our shores, and more importantly, taught Indians the power of choice. And then came the next wave, which is the digitization of the Indian economy. And digitization brought along e-commerce, it brought devices, it brought access, it brought convenience. Most exemplified by the current pandemic. It was e-commerce companies that came to the rescue, helping people across the country to have access to food, to have access to other essentials in that sense. Which is why I'm extremely optimistic and gung-ho about India and its e-commerce future. Which is why we have some e-commerce experts in the house today who will speak to us about the state of the market, the state of India's e-commerce future, and what this portends for all of us.
So the e-commerce sector in India has seen an exponential growth in the current times. In my view, this was always coming. It has been dealt a huge inflection point and acceleration in recent times. It's almost like we went from no phones to mobile phones. This is one of those things that is going to be as transformative. I think the reason why this has been fueled, in addition to the macroeconomic trends, is there is an inherent entrepreneurial nature that exists in leaders across our country, irrespective of whether you're a part of a large organization or running your own startup. The ability to look at disruption, embrace it, and work on basic principles of consumer understanding and come up with inventive business models around it, like truly grabbing the opportunity. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So for example, new categories that are exploding. In the case of Licious, we saw that convenience seeking became very, very important when people were working from home, no alternate options, etc. And the ready to cook and ready to eat segments where people are looking for healthy alternatives was becoming a big trend. So our team dived into it, came up with some delicious tasting products, which you could rustle up in 8 to 10 minutes, and rode this particular wave and actually created this category almost in the fresh meat industry. And we have seen more than 5 to 6x growth over the past year. Just like this kind of a consumer insight, using this coupled with technology to meet the consumer needs is also another very big driver. So I think this entire piece has been turbocharged by people working on identifying consumer insights and innovative and inventive solutions to bring it together to deliver it to the consumers.
What happened during the pandemic is the democratization of digital usage. Whoever was on the fence got a big push to start using the digital access that they had acquired. For our income levels, on an average, the digital literacy in India is quite high. But there is one thing peculiar that changed. A very large majority of smartphone users in India only consumed content, mostly free content. They had learned to communicate with the digital connectivity with video calls, WhatsApp, etc. And they had learned to get their content. Usage to transact, to access goods and services, to pay money digitally got a huge push. The ground was always there, the access to technology was always there. At a macro level, that is the push that happened, which has propelled the discontinuous growth of e-commerce transactions in India.
So what's really unique about the e-commerce sector in the Indian context? I'd like to break it into two parts. First, on the consumer side, and secondly, on the backend and infrastructure side. If we pick on the consumer side, there is no one India. We are a complex, heterogeneous amalgamation of people with very distinct preferences and choices. And how do you ensure you meet each of those needs? So let me use an example. If you look at demographics and psychographics, and in a complex category like meat or food in which we operate, you see that preferences are extremely customized and personalized. So for example, if you were a Bengali living in CR Park in Delhi, we will need to find a way to get you a rohu, a katla, or a hilsa fish, which is what Bengalis tend to eat. And not just offer it in Calcutta, but in CR Park in Delhi. Now, how do you find out these insights? And how are you then able to translate that into a business model to make sure that it's an arm's length access away from you? So that's one big complex piece to be solved in the Indian case. The other piece is from the back end and infrastructure that needs to help unlock this entire ecosystem. So again, going back to the industry that I work in, shipping the product from a coast in Bhimavaram to a factory in Hyderabad in the shortest possible time to ensure that you as a consumer will be able to get it in less than 24 hours while being fresh and not frozen requires a huge backend infrastructure of refrigeration technologies that need to be world class and leading edge. We have made many strides in this already, but this is the industry coming together to build a lot of these pillars of support to unlock growth.
Urban units, consumer units are often a collective. The smallest unit is that of a family. Indeed, go a little deeper, the person who places the order on the app, the person who pays for it, the person who receives the when they are delivered, and the person who consumes it could be 4 different people. The intelligence and the mechanics of e-commerce, those engines are designed for the shopper and the consumer to be the same. What gets pushed out as content, what throws up as inducement, etc., is dependent on this. And in India, this could be totally different. There, a younger or a different member of the family could actually be doing the act of browsing and placing the order on behalf of the actual consumer within the family. So that's on the demand side. On the supply and fulfillment side, the presence of a very high density of micro entrepreneurs in every catchment around every cohort of customer households is tad unique to India. In terms of number of micro retailers per 1,000 population, India is amongst the most over-retailed country. So either in terms of placing orders or in terms of fulfilling the last mile, the micro entrepreneurs are unique to India, and many e-commerce players, small and large, have done and innovations to work with these micro entrepreneurs, and it helps.
So democratization of distribution has certainly made it a much more level playing field. And we can look at it on 2 sides. One, as a retailer, there have been a huge amount of opportunities which have exploded in specialized segments where people are looking for customized or more personalized solutions. And the role of the retailers, not just providing access to the product, but also knowledge and information and trends for consumers to be able to make this choice. And we are seeing that in brands like Licious, in the meat delivery specialized vertical, in the beauty segment, in the eyewear segment, in various health products. Similarly, on the brand side, if you're a brand owner today and you have a great consumer insight and a rock solid product that meets that need, it's become so much more easy and accessible for you to list on a existing e-tail environment, or even take it one step further and using simple technology solutions to build a consumer front end for you to be able to access your own consumer directly and have plug and play solutions at the back end, which take care of the infrastructure of getting the product across to your end consumer. I think at Licious, we do both, where we are a direct to consumer brand and we own our platform as a retailer. And we've been able to see both these worlds coming together and not just equalize the past, but give us a huge jump up. And the reason I say the huge jump up is when you're engaging with your consumer directly, you also have all the consumer information available with you, and you can then use that to fine tune your mixes, your business models, to make them even more sharp, even more customized, and even more relevant to the consumer quite effectively. So I would say it's not just level the playing field, in some cases, even given an edge above.
As distribution gets digitized and democratized, it creates a flyover over the rough and tumble of conventional distribution system in a large market that India is. But when the friction reduces and when the access gets democratized, it benefits, in my view, not just small and new consumer goods players, but even the legacy players. Of course, for the small players, it means an easy way to start and succeed instead of spending years building a distribution system that is captive for themselves. For them, it collapses the entry barriers that have always existed. But that part is a known one. It's a powerful one, but it is known and often discussed. As the distribution pipe increases in diameter, as the friction reduces, it also benefits legacy large players who have big portfolios of brands. The e-commerce habit that got a big push with consuming households in the last 1 year is here to stay. Indeed, I say there is no such thing as an e-commerce household or a supermarket household or a Kirana shopping household. For every household now, every urban household, there is a Kirana shopping occasion, and there is a supermarket shopping occasion, and there is a super app shopping occasion. So that's the new way. The same household, the same consumer will shop multiple channels. What that means is the silos that have existed because brands spoke to e-commerce players a different language and they spoke to general trade or Kirana stores a different language and supermarkets a different language. That construct, those organizational silos are now obsolete. To me, omni-channel first is the mainstream way in the future, both from consumer behavior side as well as for the supplier organization and design side in the future. That is starting now.
So when I think about the future trends in e-commerce, speaking both as an almost 100% e-commerce shopper, as well as a business leader in the center of action in the e-commerce world for over 6 years, I think the first thing that strikes me is using technology to create a very immersive, humanized experience. And I'll tell you what I mean. On one hand, this is in the space of sensorial explosion. So how do you make the consumer or give the consumer the ability to engage through touch, through smell, through even sound in the right categories, which are very important factors in a touch and feel space, and leverage technology to be able to do that. Also, the other dimension, which is very critical, is the social dimension. How do you supplement the experience of having an interesting chit chat with the person on the other side of the counter? or when you go out on a Saturday afternoon with a gang of girls and you're trying to buy something and it's a fun event. Now, in both of these spaces, I think there has been a lot of work in be it AR, VR, XR, social commerce. But I believe that we are pretty much at the start of that road, and we are going to see some spectacular inventions coming along the way, which would then fuel and accelerate online and e-commerce adoption much more.
With the shift to remote learning during the pandemic and the lack of digital infrastructure in a number of schools, EdTech has come into its own in this period. In fact, India is home to 3 of the most valued global EdTechs, including the number 1, Byju's. Let's hear from them now.
So there has a lot of factors have played a very significant role in the current growth of the edtech sector, especially in the 2-3 years which we have seen. And this can be very easily classified into 3 or 4 buckets. So let's talk about each bucket. Bucket number 1 is easy access to quality education to millions and millions of students. And specifically, as the lockdown happened, all of us knew that school were the first thing to shut down and would be the last thing to open up. And that's exactly the way it have happened. Businesses have opened up, a lot of entertainment options have opened up, but schools have yet not opened up. Parents were very anxious. Students were very worried of losing a year, losing a learning year. So easy accessibility of quality education played a very significant role in driving the growth of edtech sector. So that can be bucket number 1. The second bucket is easy accessibility of data and smartphones. Well, we have spoken about it so many times, but this has really helped the edtech segment. The third thing which has led to the growth of the edtech segment can be classified on the aspect of this entire piece of customization and personalization, with an overarching technology acting as a very strong tech enabler. In a classroom, what happens is there are 40 students, learning on a blackboard. All 40 students are not the same. The way they understand the stuff, how quickly he or she understands, varies from a child to child. While in online education, it's so customized, it's so personalized that a concept is based on my ability to understand, the speed of my understanding. There are a lot of question papers, there are a lot of assessment tests. So till the time you don't understand the concept, you can't go to the next chapter or the subject. Unlike in a school wherein the class gets over and the teacher never goes back to that particular subject. So it's very customized and it's very personalized. I can go back, I can go forward depending upon how much time I'm taking as a student to understand this. So the uniqueness of the edtech segment in India, while again this is a very cliched thing, it is all about the scale and size of this country. We all know India is a young population. As per our records, there are about 260 million school-going kids in the country today, which forms your K-12 segment on a population base of about 1.3 billion people. 260 million, 265 million kids go to school. Now, the education infrastructure, the education ecosystem is not as what we think. We have multiple national boards in terms of ICSE, CBSE, and then you have 14 state boards. So the education is there. There are many schools. The schools are doing a great job. The ecosystem is doing a great job. But if you want a kid to become a self-learner, the only way a person will become a self-learner if he or she spends time, 15-20 minutes every day, going through the concepts by himself or herself. And once you do that, you will fall in love with learning. And that's the reason the uniqueness is the scale and size. And the uniqueness is that kids are very, very curious. They are very, very inquisitive to know things, to learn things. And if somebody is providing this in form of a video, which is like a movie, it's a 2-3 minute movie, very well done, talking about educational concepts. Once you go through that, you will never forget it. And once you start learning this way, once you become a self-learner, you will want to learn more. And that is the single largest unique proposition as far as education is concerned, and scaled up with our population and the addressable universe of 260 to 270 million kids. And that's so unique about EdTech in India. As we spoke about, parents were anxious. People were thinking about losing a year, and nobody wanted to lose a learning year. So what happened? That tech enabled teachers to teach online. They have never taught online. They were always a classroom setup. So the entire journey from a blackboard to a digital screen was enabled by tech. Then you had LMS, Learning Management System platform. So you have a Google Classroom, for example. You become a Google Classroom user. The entire classroom is available on a click of a button, with opportunities for teachers to upload content, teachers to upload worksheets, assessment, question papers, and then students to then go and log in, and all things are available on a press of a button. There are multiple such learning platforms available. Now, this is all tech enabled. The other thing is that the teachers also got an opportunity to look at educational edtech content, because it became very, very easy for them, because they were not facing the students. The students are not facing them. It's completely virtual. Everybody is having a front seat. The teacher is having the front seat when she's teaching. The student is having a front seat when he or she is listening to the teacher. So teachers started adopting this in a very good way, using the content and using that content and using their experience of teaching. It was a perfect blend of using the experience of teaching and using technology to pass on the education for that particular student, for that particular school, and thereby ensuring that the year was not lost from a student's perspective. So in a way, technology played a massive role in driving the last 12 to 14 months. Yeah, the future trends as far as EdTech or education is concerned, it is more or less becoming that going forward, education is going to be hybrid or blended, the way you put it. Yeah, schools have to start, and schools will start. If not today, in 2 months or 3 months, school will start. All students will be going back to school. But the last 12 to 14 months has taught us to learn by ourselves, study by ourselves. So they will come back and they will be studying on their own. So one big trend which we see in the future is going to be blended learning. The second big trend which we see going forward is that people are going to be doing group learning, not in physical form, but they will be doing group learning in a virtual form. So 5 friends will be coming together and they will be learning. There will be a lot of sharing. There will be a lot of discussions. So the LMS platforms are going to play a significant role. So the other big trend is going to be synchronized learning virtually, with lot of focus on LMS platforms. So these are the top 2 trends which I see are going to change education, and this is going to be changing forever.
We hope you got a glimpse into the rich culture of innovation, specifically in the area of technology, which is thriving currently in India. We hope you found it interesting, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you all very much indeed. To celebrate this very special launch, we've created a very special app. It's a virtual reality experience where you can literally visit every single country that's featured in the 2021 study. Well, you can get it on your desktop, your laptop, your tablet, your mobile phone. All you need to do is just download it from the URL that's on the screen here. Enjoy, explore. It's full of interest and insights, and we'll be refreshing the content frequently over the course of the next few months. So please do go back frequently. Earlier, I talked about the significance of countries being seen as brands. This is being increasingly realised right across the world, not just by business leaders, but by governments at the most senior of levels. I caught up with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands and asked him how important he believes country brands are.
Mr. Prime Minister, what contribution do you think that retailing makes to the economy and society in general?
So many. I mean, it is the biggest employer in the Netherlands. 900,000 people are somehow connected to the retail sector, so it is huge in its economic impact. That means that many people, in many cases young people, start their working life experiences in the retail sector. It is also a place where you can learn how to be more entrepreneurial and how to start your own business. It is a sector in our economy which is very much focused on innovation and disruptive innovation. It is very much connected to the modern economy, to the internet, to online shopping. So there are so many positives. And it's also a place where people come together. It's also a sort of community place. In some of the stores, people drink a cup of coffee, meet friends, and then buy some stuff. So it has many, many impacts on society.
Mr. Prime Minister, you had a fantastic career at Unilever. You obviously know brands very well. Do you think country brands are as important as product brands?
Oh, they're crucial. And what I found in this job is that the brand of Amsterdam, the brand of the Netherlands, the brand of Eindhoven, or the whole commercial area around cities like Zwolle and Amersfoort are crucial for our international standing. And the fact that you can bike to school as a child, that it's relatively safe here, that there are so many possibilities when you like sports or culture. And I really learned to brand that much more than we did already.
One last question, Mr. Prime Minister. What advice would you give retailers today who are under a lot of pressure, under a lot of stress? Everything's changing very fast.
Yeah, but still, at the same time, you are in a fascinating sector. So enjoy what you are doing. We live only once. This is the real thing. This is not the. So you have to make the best of it. And there are so many opportunities for good salespeople, for good businessmen and women, to make use of all those opportunities which are out there, and do realize that you play a very important part in societies. You are really part of society.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, I can't believe it. We've come to the end of our broadcast. We're almost out of time. I'd like to thank everybody who participated in today's broadcast. And just to remind you again, please do download the app and enjoy going virtually into every single one of our countries in this year's 2021 Best Countries Study. So from me, David Roth, thank you very much indeed. And Mike, thank you very much indeed as well.
My pleasure. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Well, have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We really appreciate it.